Welcome to the intro training exercises for Sharperlight's Excel add-in on SAP Business One. Please follow the video carefully, and if needed, use the PDF listed within the description for further information. This is Exercise 1. Exercise 1 has two parts, A to B. This exercise gives an introduction to the Training Excel workbook, a brief introduction to the Sharperlight Excel add-in, then we create Sharperlight value formulas with each part. All the exercises are to be done on the Excel workbook named SAP Business One Sharperlight Training V2-3 blank. To get this workbook, go to Sharperlight's Manual and Guides page and download the Sharperlight SAP Business One exercises zip. When Sharperlight is installed, the Excel add-in installs by default. You should see the Sharperlight Excel ribbon here. Before we begin the exercise, we'll go through a quick introduction into the Sharperlight Excel ribbon. Sharperlight's main application is the Query Builder, where you can define and preview a query. The Query Manager opens a window and lets you see all available queries in all workbooks currently open. You can create new, edit, or delete the queries from this window. In the Formula tab are four types of MD formulas: value, table, list, and sheet. These are all varying ways you can output data into a cell constructed from Query Builder. In the Recalculate tab are three different types of recalculations. These different types are sometimes useful when you have long loading times or large workbooks. In the Tools tab, you can find a variety of buttons and functions, including Drill Down, which allows the selected cell to be drilled on if possible, Write Back, where you can define a write back, Other, where the notable functions of Detach Formulas and Convert to Delayed Formulas exist. Detach formulas allow you to turn any Sharperlight Excel add-in specific cells back into static values, so you can share with others who don't have access to your environment. Convert to Delayed Formulas converts any formula cells to delayed formula cells, which do not refresh unless you specifically refresh with the Sharperlight Recalculate buttons. Lastly, you can log in or out with this button. To be able to interact with the data model, it is required that you are logged in, as they are typically licensed. We'll begin part A, where we will create our first MD value formula, which is used to create and execute a query to return a single value to a cell. Select the D7 cell and then click on the Value button in the Sharperlight Excel ribbon. The Query Builder window should open. If you are unfamiliar with Query Builder, we recommend you go through some of the available resources covering it. Otherwise, follow the video. As mentioned before, MD value formulas are used to return a single value into a cell. Thus, our query mode is set to aggregation. Make sure your product is set to SAP Business One. You can then select your company. Query Builder for Excel can reference cells within the workbook. With the company filter parameter highlighted, navigate to the default sheet and double-click on the cell C3, where the company value for OEC Computer UK exists. Typically, you would see the cell code and sheet code if you've navigated to another sheet. However, the cell for company is a named cell, thus our filter populates the cell name. Next, we want to select a table. Click on the Table Lookup button and under the Financials folder, select GL Transactions. You can highlight and click OK, or double-click on the table to select it. We should then see our selection pane and mandatory filters populate relative to the table we just selected. Now we want to set our filter values for Geo account code. Our workbook has value lists on the right side, so move the Query Builder window if you need to. Select and highlight the From Filter parameter and then double-click on the N7 cell. You should see both the From and To parameter update. If not, also highlight the To parameter and then double-click on the cell N7. Now we want to set our year period code filter range. We want it to filter on the current month. Just like we reference the cell =def company, we'll highlight our filter value for year period code and then navigate to the default sheet and select the cell C4 for =def period. The filter should now be filtering on the period 2007-002. For our outputs, we want amount. Find and double click or drag it to the outputs pane. Double click on the amount output or right click and click on options to bring up the options window. We want to reverse sign our output, so under number options select reverse sign. Click OK. This is our query definition completed for our value formula for the current month actual revenue. Click on OK. And if your query is unsaved, you will have a window pop up where you can name your query. Name our query X1 current actual revenue. Click OK. Our value formula now has populated in the cell D7. However, we want it for our entire column for revenue. Click and drag on our cell to copy the definition for cells D7 to D9. Like other functions, any variables with cell coordinates exist within the brackets, and as we drag down on our value formula, Excel correctly assumes the cell coordinates change. We want our next value formula to be for year-to-date actual revenue. It is a very similar query to the revenue. So double click on your D7 cell to open the value formula query. From the filters pane, you can right click and select copy to clipboard. This copies a query definition to your clipboard. Close the window. Now select the cell H7, then select value formula from the Sharperlight Excel ribbon. Right click in the filters pane and import query from clipboard. Next, we want to add what we call a pseudo field, which is an artificial field that is set to be a prompt only filter, meaning it holds values within the filters pane but does not filter on the query. Right click while in the filters pane and go to other. These are the different data types for a pseudo field we can choose from. We want a period data type, so select period. We're happy with the default description of period, so click OK. Then click and drag the filter to be under the GL transactions filter. You can right click and go to options, or simply double click on the filter to bring up the options window. Change the name to period and set the behavior to single values only. Click OK. The pseudo field should now only have a from parameter. Use the drop down on the from parameter and select equals def period, which is the named cell for the period we want to pass into the query. Now that we have our pseudo field for period, we want to use it from our year period code filter. From the parameters, you can use the drop down and change the values to be at period, which is the name of our pseudo field, with the at denoting a filter. This means it uses the value from the pseudo filter, but now we want to make the filter a range from the start of the year relative to the period to the period. We can do this by adding a shortcode. For the from parameter, add OYS, which is short for on year start. Click OK and save your value formula query as X1 YTD Actual Revenue. Your value formula will populate for the year-to-date actual revenue. Drag the formula down for cells H7 to H9. This concludes the training for exercise 1 for the Sharperlight Excel add-in on SAP Business One. For more information and in-depth explanations, please refer back to the training PDF.